I've played a shit ton of games in my life, but throughout all these years, the horror genre has just seemed to always pass me by, which is crazy to think because I just love horror in general. But after I saw the reveal trailer for Resident Evil 8, or Resident Evil Village, or Village Resident Evil, or whatever the hell you want to call it, I realized that I never really played Resident Evil before. Well, I did play RE4, but that was a really long time ago and I barely remember anything about it, and while I did watch the movies around that same time, I kind of repressed all that shit out of my memory. And yeah, I did play the demo for RE2 Remake, but that barely counts because I don't even know what the fuck's going on. But ever since the reveal trailer, I've just tried to get my hands on every RE game that I could possibly think of. And I've got all the mainline games, and some of the side ones, and I just want to play them, and talk about them, and yeah, you have to watch. I've locked your browser and your doors. You can't escape. So with that, I might as well start at the beginning, and I do want to say something. I played the remake of Resident Evil 1 before I got my greasy fingers on the original. But I was able to play it after, and I will talk about it and compare it to the original at the end. So let's start. The original Resident Evil came out on March 22nd, 1996 to critical acclaim for its unique gameplay, chilling atmosphere, and most importantly, the spooks. But the visuals were, well, let's just say they didn't age too gracefully in the years following its release, so Capcom sought to remake Resident Evil, updating its visuals as well as adding some gameplay improvements, new locations, and new enemies. And exactly 6 years after the release of the original, Resident Evil Remake was birthed into the world, and a lot of people didn't like it? What? Many people complained about the game's controls and overall design and mechanics, saying that they were outdated. And so the game didn't do that well, and then RE4 released and basically killed off the old RE design for good, and it would never return. But over the years, and after many mediocre entries into the series, a lot of people looked back and realized that, hey, maybe this game wasn't that bad after all. And then all of a sudden, many people wanted more of this. So in 2015, Capcom released an HD remaster of the original RE remake that increased the resolution and quality of backgrounds and textures, as well as cleaned up some of the audio. And that's where we are today, and I'm gonna have to be completely honest, I didn't go into this game expecting it to be anything special. I mean, it's from 2002, for Christ's sake. But I was blown away at how good this game actually was, as well as how well everything held up, including the story. And it may seem simple at first, but there are a lot of layers to uncover in the story. So now I will, as quickly as possible, recap the story of the first Resident Evil game. In this game, you can choose to play as one of two characters, either Jill Valentine or Chris Redfield, but I always choose to play as Jill, so I'm going to talk about Jill's version of events here. You play as a member of the Raccoon City Police Department's Special Tactics and Rescue Service Alpha Team, who are searching for the helicopter of Bravo Team, who they lost contact with while they were investigating strange murders in the Arclay Mountains. They do eventually find their helicopter, but something is obviously not right, and then this shit happens.
Bravo Team's helicopter was a derelict. Save for the remaining body of Kevin.
In the chaos, Alpha Team's helicopter pilot Brad leaves them behind like the coward he is, and the remaining STARS members are forced to seek refuge from the rabid dogs in a large mansion in the middle of the woods. Here we have Jill Valentine, Barry Burton, and Albert Wesker, who seems pretty calm after witnessing one of his own men being eaten alive by rabid dogs, but hey, who am I to judge a man who wears sunglasses at night? They hear a gunshot, so Barry and Jill go to check it out, and then this happens. Barry dispatches the monster with great dispatch and they go to tell Wesker what they found, but oh no, Wesker is missing and they decide to do a pro gamer move and split up to search for clues alone in a spooky mansion in the middle of the woods filled with monsters and zombies and rabid dogs. Jill begins to find the bodies of Bravo team throughout the mansion. Oh look, this one's got a grenade launcher. Don't mind if I do. Oh shit, I'm sorry, you can have it back. Jill comes across some zombies, but hey, it's a guy from Bravo team who isn't dead. Oh, but then he dies fighting a giant snake. But at least we got a shotgun, so I guess his death wasn't in vain. Jill eventually finds Barry and they both come to the conclusion that something isn't quite right here, and I wonder what clued them in. Jill eventually makes it outside and then this thing shows up. That's Lisa Trevor and I'll talk more about her later. So then she makes it to the residence and Barry's there, but he's talking to himself. Cabin fever can do crazy things to the mind. Jill comes across some fucking sharks and then kills them, and then there's a giant plant monster and Barry shows up with a flamethrower and they kill it together, and then Wesker shows up for his second appearance in the game. I wonder what color his eyes are. Probably yellow, like his hair. But now Brad, the helicopter pilot from the beginning, is planning to come back and rescue them, but he needs a sign and the walkie-talkie is broken so Jill can't talk to him. So Brad might not be that bad after all. But now Jill's underground and she finds Enrico who says there's a traitor amongst the stars. Wait, who the fuck is Enrico? It doesn't matter because he gets shot by someone off screen instantly and dies. But then Barry shows back up, so Jill and Barry go down an elevator, but Lisa Trevor's down there, and Barry leaves Jill down there with this thing. Barry, no! I trusted you implicitly! So now Jill has to get past this thing, and then she makes it back to the mansion, back underground, and Barry's there, but there's no time to explain because Lisa Trevor shows up, and we gotta put an end to her suffering already. So Jill makes it to the underground laboratory where everything starts to come together. She finds out that Chris is still alive and that Wesker is in fact the traitor in the stars. Oh no, I did not see that coming at all. And apparently the Umbrella Corporation, a pharmaceutical company, is behind all the crazy monsters and shit. And they were experimenting with the T-virus and creating biological weapons, and they were doing it in the mansion, but some infected dogs escaped, and the virus got everywhere, and everyone in the mansion got infected. And wait, what the hell is Umbrella? It doesn't matter yet. What does matter is Barry is being blackmailed by Wesker to, wait, what is Wesker trying to do again? Lure the stars to the mansion to test the tyrant. Okay, that's the tyrant. But then he says it had nothing to do with Umbrella and he's gonna burn the place to the ground? Wait, so is he working for Umbrella or is he not? What the hell's going on here? Okay, so apparently Wesker is a triple agent working against Stars and Umbrella and he just wanted the tyrant to himself. But Barry switches sides at the last second, saving Jill's life by shooting Wesker, but in his dying breath, Wesker opens the tyrant's test thing, and the tyrant it's not happy, and it whacks Wesker across the room, definitely killing him. And then it whacks Barry, leaving Jill the only one here to fight it, but it's a pretty easy fight because I saved up a bunch of magnum ammo and killed him almost instantly. But it turns out Barry is actually still alive, and so is Wesker, and he started the self-destruct sequence. So they go get Chris and make it to the surface and shoot off a flare to signal Brad, but then the tyrant shows up even stronger than ever. But Brad throws Jill a rocket launcher, then she blows up the tyrant.
Jill, use it! Kill it, whatever it is!
Jill and Barry and Chris fly off into the sunrise and the mansion explodes behind them. Jesus Christ. Okay, did you get all that? There's gonna be a test later. So with that out of the way, we can now talk about everything else. So, I just want to say, I really like this game, and I think it's a great break from all the hyper-violent, fast, action-oriented power fantasies that have been flooding the market recently. And don't get me wrong, I like all that shit too, but sometimes I just want all that power taken away. And this game is a really great change of pace for once. So I'm gonna break this down into a handful of categories. The setting and all the shit related to the setting, some gameplay shit, the enemies that I think are cool, and why I choose Jill scenarios over Chris. And then I'll do a quick comparison to the original 1996 release and sum up my thoughts. So let's start with the setting and shit. The setting of a spooky mansion isn't anything new, but this game executes this setting perfectly. It's hard to describe just how beautiful this mansion is, and it is beautiful. This game uses pre-rendered backgrounds and they serve a couple of purposes. First, they save a lot of memory, which allowed the developers to make the backgrounds more detailed and basically increase the detail of everything in the game. And this game looks great for 18 years old. Like, some of these backgrounds were so good I thought they were 3D the first time I saw them. But they aren't. And these outdoor environments are, they are so good. They are really good looking. Like, they look better than anything on the market at that time. But some of the backgrounds are, I guess you could say, bad looking. I mean, some are highly compressed, but this game is 18 years old. Can you really complain that an 18-year-old game looks kind of bad compared to a game from 2020? Second, the pre-rendered backgrounds allowed the developers to control what the player could see and how they feel. The camera's placement can invoke feelings of isolation, claustrophobia, paranoia, suspense. And although it can be kind of annoying for an enemy to grab you the second you run past the camera, I ultimately think it benefits the game's tense atmosphere. Getting ready to turn a corner only for a zombie to pop out and try to give you a kiss, just barely avoiding getting grabbed, is a harrowing feeling. There's a room you can access at the beginning of the game that has a dagger on a shelf at the end of a small hall. When you get the dagger and run back around the corner, the camera doesn't change. Instead, this happens. Not only is that scary as shit, but it gives you a chance to learn how the dagger actually works. It's the camera along with these beautiful backgrounds with all sorts of lighting effects, FMVs, and shadows that sells this mansion. I know the layout of this mansion better than my own damn home. And the soundtrack. Oh my god, the soundtrack. From the ominous drones and disappearance to the spine-tingling chimes in Vacant Room, every track has something to offer, and almost every room has a unique track to go with it. But there is one track that I will never be able to forget. Imagine, if you will, you've been traversing the mansion for a couple of hours. You haven't saved once, and you're running low on health and ammo. You fought your way through groups of dozens of zombies and dogs. Coming across a small door underneath a staircase, you can only assume the worst is behind it. It slowly begins to open, and as you think your game is over, quick lesson, these rooms are save rooms. They have a chest to put your stuff in and a typewriter to save, but in order to use the typewriter, you need an ink ribbon. Ink ribbons can be found around the mansion, but there are a finite resource, so you need to know when and where to save. This adds a level of management to the game on top of all the other shit you need to manage. Every resource in this game is finite, from ink ribbons for saving to healing items and ammo. This forces the player to keep track of what they're using at all times. And coupled with the limited inventory space, you need to manage carrying resources to survive, key items to progress, and weapons and ammo to defend yourself from the monsters hiding in the mansion. Speaking of defending yourself, you can find things like daggers, stun gun batteries, and, if you play as Chris, flash grenades that, when picked up, can be used to defend yourself. And the best part is, they don't take up any inventory space. If grabbed, you can press a button and Jill or Chris will pull out whichever defensive item you have selected and use it on that enemy, stunning them and giving you a chance to escape. But unlike the daggers and Jill's stun gun, Chris's flash grenades will actually kill zombies, and it's always cool to shove a grenade in a zombie's mouth and watch its head explode. But there are only a few defensive items in the game, so you should be able to decide, if grabbed, whether or not you should waste a defensive item in order to get away, or let the zombie bite you, but save a defensive item later if you come across a tougher enemy. That's something else about this game I like. You don't need to kill everything that moves to win. In fact, the game makes it purposefully difficult to kill even one zombie at the start of the game. You get a single magazine for your pistol, and a knife. and there's zombies literally everywhere. So now there's this whole new dynamic to the game of, okay, I have enough ammo to kill this zombie, but it's only one zombie in a large area, so I could just run past him and save the ammo for a boss fight or some other shit later on down the line. There's always at least 2 different ways to get to certain areas, so you can always make a plan to avoid an area based on how many enemies are there or what kind of enemy there is to avoid encounters altogether. This game is a survival horror game through and through. The chilling atmosphere and thrilling scares along with some of the craziest monsters I've ever seen make it a horror game. And the item management, inventory management, health management, and even the enemy management make it a survival game. Survival, horror. See? It all makes sense now. But what about all these enemies I keep bringing up? I'm not going to talk about every single enemy type in the game, I just want to quickly speak about the ones that I really like. But I will list off every other enemy in the game, just so you know they exist. First off, there's the standard zombie. They're slow and easy to kill, or just easy to run past if you can do that. The Cerberus, aka rabid dogs. They're fast and roam in packs and can get you on the ground pretty quick. Crows, they can stop you in your tracks and kill you because Jill doesn't know how to deal with fucking birds, I guess. The Fountain Plant, basically an obstacle for a quick puzzle and a foreshadowing for a later boss. Forest, no not that Forest, Forest Spear, who is pecked to death by birds and for some reason can run really fast and does a lot of damage. For some reason. Yawn, aka Big Snake, and Adder, aka Small Snakes. Bees, just bees. Neptune the Shark, Plant 42, which is a giant plant that sucks the blood of the living for sustenance, and the one and only Tyrant. I know he's supposed to be the cool final boss, but he's really easy to kill, and in his second phase, all you have to do is run away and dodge him until Brad drops the rocket launcher and you can just blow him up in one shot. Okay, now for the enemies that I think are really cool. After a while of roaming through the mansion, you may become confident enough in your abilities to dispatch zombies. But that's when the game will throw you a curveball in the form of Crimson Heads. Early on, you can find a note in a save room underneath the stairs that explains what these things are. When a zombie goes down, it doesn't stay down. Instead, it begins mutating, becoming faster and stronger, and at any moment, they can get back up, and they will not be happy. The only way to keep zombies from coming back is to either blow their heads off or burn them. But like everything else, fuel is a finite resource, so you'll need to know which bodies to burn and which ones to let come back. When entering the mansion after coming back from the residence, an FMV cutscene will play and this happens. These are hunters, and they're really fast and can also cut your head off. These things are tough if you don't come prepared, and now they fill every room you once thought safe in the mansion. And they also can dodge your attacks and break down doors. Oh god! When you get to the residence, everything seems fine, but when entering the rec room, you come face to back with a giant enemy spider. I don't really like spiders, and the reveal of this enemy is fucking cool as shit, so I've got some conflicting feelings going on in my head. At the very end of the game, you can find a slideshow that shows off all the crazy shit you've been fighting, from dogs to sharks to hunters, but it doesn't show off every enemy in the game. Because when entering the generator area, completely out of nowhere, this thing shows up. Oh, that's great. I think I'm gonna go home now. These things are called Chimera, and the only reason I know that is because I looked it up, because at no point does this game explain why this crazy human-fly hybrid piece of shit enemy even exists. The game's just like, here, fight this thing now, and I really want to go home. Remember Lisa Trevor? We're going to talk about her now. When making your way to a small cabin in the woods behind the mansion, you get a radio call from Barry.
Somebody respond! Over!
Barry?
Monster! James! Gun! Ineffective! Instant! Stay away! Forest outside mansion! Stay! Hey!
And then you hear this. Then, when you make it to the cabin, it seems someone is still living there. And when you go to leave... Like I said, that's Lisa Trevor. You encounter her again in the caves under the courtyard. You can't fight her because she's unkillable, and trust me, I have tried. All you can do is try to find a way around her, and when you do, you come to this strange area called Lisa's room. In this room, you can find all these dolls, candles, and a jewelry box with a key item and a note. The note is written by Lisa herself. If you've been collecting notes and journal entries around the mansion, you can begin to piece together a sad tale of inhumane experimentation and a family torn apart. Lisa's father was involved in the construction of the Spencer Mansion. That's the name of the mansion. I thought I'd tell you now because the game sure as hell doesn't. Because Lisa's father built the mansion, Umbrella forced his family to live in the mansion. At one point, he made a plan to escape, but as far as I know, that plan didn't go very well and he is most definitely dead. Umbrella would begin experimenting on Lisa and her mother, and slowly she would begin to mutate, becoming unkillable. At one point, she apparently kills somebody, which could have been her mother, but it's written really strange, so I can't really tell, but if it is, she's wearing her mother's face. That's what's on her face, by the way. As her mental capacity began to deteriorate, Umbrella still saw potential in her invincibility and locked her in a cabin behind the mansion for further studies. And if the dates on the notes are anything to go by, she's been there for over 20 years. And all she's ever wanted these past 20 years was to reunite with her mother. When finally confronting Lisa and opening her mother's tomb, she takes the skull of her mother and jumps off the edge into the abyss. Inside the tomb, there's a letter. It was from her mother about a plan to escape that obviously never happened. Before this, she'd been fighting brain-dead zombies and rabid dogs and snakes and shit, but Lisa was different. She had a voice, and she could still think. And just knowing that underneath all those chains and that gross face, there was a person who's been suffering. It's a really sad story packed alongside a bunch of other sad stories that make up the lore of this mansion. I absolutely definitely did not do Lisa Trevor's story justice here, so you should totally go read the notes. I'll probably link to it or something. Okay, that was really sad, and I've gone over most of what I like, but before comparing the original and the remake, I want to talk about one last thing. I said at the beginning that I usually choose to play as Jill more than Chris, and I just want to quickly explain why that is. As much as I like Chris, he has some major disadvantages over Jill. First of all, Jill has 2 more inventory spaces than Chris, which means he'll be backtracking a lot more to go get items he needs because he just can't carry everything. Also, Jill has a lockpick, which is like a little key item that doesn't take up any inventory space, and she can access like twice as much as Chris can at the beginning of the game with no downsides. So Chris has to carry a bunch of shitty keys around with him, along with the keys needed to progress, and yes, the keys take up inventory space. Chris's key item is a lighter, which is useful, but it's not nearly as useful as Jill's lockpick. When it comes to their story scenarios, they are basically exactly the same, with the only difference being their partner. Jill gets Barry, but Chris gets Rebecca. Rebecca is Star's rookie medic, and that's all I know about her. She first shows up a bit into the mansion, and then only shows up a couple of times after that until the end of the game. Basically what I'm saying is that Barry is like 100 times better than Rebecca. Although Rebecca can kiss your boo-boos if you're hurt, and that's always nice, she isn't as fleshed out or as interesting of a character as Barry, because Barry has a character. He has motivations and interests. We get to learn more about him, like the fact that he has a family. And by the end of the game, he actually changes as a character. He undergoes a character arc, for better or for worse, when he decides to go against Wesker and save the life of his partner and close friend, knowing that it could mean the loss of his family.
Even if it meant my family, I couldn't bear turning my back on my friends again.
What happens to Rebecca throughout the story? She plays the piano and gets scared of a hunter, and she's there at the end of the game and she sets off the self-destruct, so I guess she does something. When I first played as Chris, I heard a scream from upstairs and I just ignored it for the rest of the game, and when I got to the end I thought to myself, hey, where the hell's Rebecca? As it turns out, she fucking died. There is a moment in Jill's scenario where the same can happen to Barry, but it's during the fight with Lisa Trevor, which is like so much sadder because you directly cause it if you decide to take his gun, and you just have to watch it happen. And then that picture of his family falls out of his shirt, and oh my god, I think I'm gonna start crying. It's so sad, holy shit. All that happened in Chris's scenario is he heard a scream from upstairs, and apparently it was Rebecca, and now she's dead. Overall, Chris's scenario just doesn't have the same effect on me as Jill's does, and as much as I want to love Rebecca, she just isn't as compelling of a character as Barry, and you know what? Fuck it. Barry is my spirit animal now. I love him that much, and I hope to God he returns in another game, and if he doesn't, I'm gonna fucking cry or something, I don't know. I've been talking about the Resident Evil remake this whole time. Now, I'm not a big-brained scientist, but I can assume that the remake is, in fact, not the original. I did manage to get a copy of the original Resident Evil after I'd already beaten the remake, and I would like to quickly just see what they have in common and what they absolutely do not have in common. First of all, the tone.
Joseph!
These games could not be any different in their tone if they tried. I get that this game is from 1996, but holy shit, it's not even the visuals that I can't handle, it's the voice acting. I just couldn't stop laughing anytime anybody opened their mouth. It's like they're reading from the script for the first time.
What is it?
That was a gunshot, Barry. You don't know what a gun sounds like?
What? What is this?
It's blood, Barry.
Blood.
Well, if you knew what it was, then why did you even ask?
I found something.
What is it?
It's a weapon. It's really powerful, especially against living things.
Well, what else would it be effective against, Barry?
Just take a look at this. It's forest.
Yes, it is, Barry. Yes, it is. And it's not just Barry. Literally everyone sounds like this. It's just that he has the most lines. But here are some other examples of questionable dialogue.
Stop it! Don't open that door!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
Do you think we could see Tyrant now?
Barry, you're so optimistic.
Oh, Jill, this house is dangerous. There are terrible demons. Ouch!
I still like the voice acting though. It's charming in a way only 90s games can be. Apart from the voice acting itself, the mansion has gone through quite a few changes. It's kind of strange to see the mansion with so little detail. It's not that these old pre-rendered backgrounds are bad, it's just that they lack almost anything in them. The mansion has almost no windows, and there are a lot of rooms that are completely open and barren of anything except for like a shelf and a fucking desk. And everything's really well lit. Not that that's a bad thing, it's just like, why is everything so well lit? Of course, the remake has rooms that are completely lit up, but even then they're lit up in a moody sort of way. The layout of the mansion has gone through some changes. The lack of a door in this room completely threw me off, and the fact that you can't even get to the mirror hall, or as they call it here, the rough passage, until the very end of the game is just really strange. Most areas have just a graphical overhaul, but some areas have been completely changed up and look nothing like they did in the original. The Aqua Ring, for instance, is not even a ring in this game. It's just a small room that you can run in and out in a minute, and the sharks aren't even a very big threat. The amount of work they put into this remake is astounding. Lisa Trevor does not exist in the original, nor does the cabin outside the woods, so the graveyard and the path to the cabin do not exist at all in the original. The secret door behind the painting that leads to the courtyard does not exist in the original either, nor do Crimson Heads. That's all in the remake. So there's no Elder Crimson boss fight that gets you the stone and metal object, which leads into the puzzle changes to the mansion. In the remake, in order to get to the stone and metal object to access the courtyard, you need to find death masks. In place of death masks in the original are crests, which you can still find in the remake, but they're used for a completely different puzzle. Other than that, there are a couple jump scares moved around, and somehow the remake didn't end up retconning any story elements whatsoever. When it comes to gameplay, there is no quick turn in the original, which makes sticky situations harder to get out of. And Jill can actually pick the lock of sword key doors, which she cannot do in the remake? Hello, what the fuck, Capcom? These changes make me appreciate the hard work and dedication the developers at Capcom put into this remake in order to make it as good as they possibly could. They didn't just make this as a cash grab, they truly wanted to go back and perfect a game they'd spent so much time making. And I think they did a fine job. So, in conclusion, I really like this game. Resident Evil is an iconic game with some great scares and intense moments that can keep you on your toes. The story is just compelling enough to keep you wanting to know more. The gameplay is timeless and the remake enforces this. The puzzles, although not too difficult, do force you to think, and the pacing is, well, let's just say it's perfect. The enemies are really scary and, like I said, can cut your head off, but most importantly, Barry is my spirit animal. The remake improves upon every aspect tenfold and adds a shit ton of new stuff to keep you on your toes. The visuals are absolutely amazing and want me to move to the Midwest. Just kidding, I already live in the Midwest, and yeah, there are zombies everywhere. The puzzles in the remake are perfectly crafted and did force me to use that little old walnut rolling around in my head a couple of times. Gameplay has been perfected and could not get any better. This is the perfect survival horror game, and of course Barry is still my spirit animal. Resident Evil is a great break from all those bombastic action games that have flooded the market recently, and while I enjoy those games, you could say Resident Evil was a breath of fresh air. Thank you. And if I had to recommend a game to play on Halloween because you ain't going out trick-or-treating this year, it would have to be Resident Evil. And if you can get your hands on the remake and the original, play them both. They're both great experiences that stand out for different reasons. So if you haven't already, play Resident Evil. It's only $20 on Steam. So anyway, that's all I got.